We are reforming, but at a slower pace than the rest of the world. So what happens? The rest of the world is leaving us behind.
I'll talk now to Roberto Luis Troster. He is an economist here in Brazil. Please, Troster, what is the economic forecast for 2018?
Well, the outlook is good. First, inflation for Brazilian standards is going to stay low, more or less 4% this year. For consumer prices, the GDP will grow over 3%. You're going to have something that's called overshooting in the economic activity. Whenever you come back with economy, usually you go above the steady state level. So it's going to be 3.5%. Dollar is going to, real is going to be overvalued. So I forecast the dollar at 3.1 or 3.0 at the end of this year. So in the macro variables are good. Job unemployment is going to continue high. And most important, is going to be a year with a lot of volatility. We are having elections in October 2nd, so we're going to have a very, very dynamic year with stock markets going up and dropping, exchange rate volatility, but economic activity is not going to be too much influenced by it.
What do you expect regarding investments here in the country?
Well, as you have a lot of capacity, so you're still going to invest very little this year. Second, Brazil lacks international competitiveness. Rankings of competitiveness in Brazil is in 125th in the world. It's only more competitive than Venezuela in South America. So what happens? Companies that could come to Brazil, they go to a neighbor country like Paraguay, Uruguay, or Argentina, set the investment over there and export goods and services to Brazil. So Brazil has the costs, but doesn't have the benefits of investment. You have to modernize institutions here in Brazil, and that's being done at a very, very, very low pace.
What about investments in the stock market?
It's going to be, well, two things. First, it depends on what happens in the rest of the world. You can have, or you may have, something going wrong with the world stock markets. Many people are forecasting that you might be in a stock market bubble. So if the markets drop above, if interest rates suddenly go up in the United States, or inflation go up unexpectedly, interest rates go up, stock markets will come down. Second, what happens inside here? So it's going to be, due to the elections, it's going to be a very, very, very volatile market. If you want to have strong emotions, then invest in the stock market. Otherwise, stay away from it.
What will we see on exports and also international prices of commodities?
Well, international prices should, if interest rates continue low, economic activity is growing. 60% of the exports of Brazil go to Europe, China, United States, and Argentina. Argentina is growing a lot. It's going to grow 3% this year, and it's importing a lot. Just to give a figure, in 2016, Brazil exported on average 20,000 cars a month. Last year, 2017, it exported 60,000 cars a month, and mostly to Argentina. So Argentina growing, it's going to demand a lot of exports from Brazil. Second, Europe is growing slowly, but it's doing fairly well. The United States is growing, and China is growing. So all the destinies of exportations, or the most important exportations are growing. So it's reasonable to project a growth in exports next year. As the economy is growing faster this year than last year, and you have that overshooting phenomenon, imports are also going to grow a lot. So you might have a trade balance about the same value as you did last year.
Will short-term interest rate remain about 7.0 or near it?
Yes, basic interest rates, yes. Credit rates continue very, very, very high. Some of rates charged from companies over 200, 300% a year. And some loans are lent here at 800, 900%. That's a dynamic that a problem that the government doesn't recognize. And it's a great, great break in the economy. You should inject, the prescription would be to put more liquidity in the economy, but the government doesn't seem to be aware of it.
Many economists in the market fear the elections. They fear an extremist candidate if he wins. And the economy probably won't continue this recovery. What's your opinion?
No, the economy will recover. The economy is recovering in spite of the economy. That means it was expected that it would recover some years ago. The path of the crisis was more or less forecast, and it didn't change very much, first. Second, whoever takes office might have one speech, but in the day-to-day, they all seem very, let's say, rational about economics. The fiscal control, low inflation. The country doesn't stand up, doesn't bear policies that bring more inflation. Had Dilma controlled the inflation and made the country grow, she still would have be the president.
Where will be the opportunities in business this year here in Brazil?
Well, first, consuming goods, so banks, retails. Second, tourism. You have a very high potential for tourism in Brazil. Brazil, on average, has 6 million visitors per year. That's a little higher than Chile, for example, has, or 1/5 of what Mexico has. So there's a big potential for that. That's something that has a big potential. Second, financial institutions are also have a relative good upside. As delinquency rates are falling, profits are rising.
What about industry?
The industry is improving, but very slowly. Because you're not modernizing the industry here in Brazil. So traditional industries like cement, those types of industries are growing, but modern industries that are the ones that have higher value added, they're not growing very fast here in Brazil.
What about commodities market regarding agriculture? Last year, we had a super harvest. What about this year?
Well, the forecasts are that we're going to have a year that is going to be, the harvest is going to be a bit smaller than it was last year. It will be a good harvest, nice volumes, but shorter than last year.
Troster, explain a game on words you made in a recent article you wrote.
Glocalization. Glocalization is a combination of global and local. Glocalization is the act of thinking global and acting local. Some cities in Brazil are perceiving that if you want to grow more than your peers, you have to think global and act local. One example was the city of Campinas. They decided we're going to grow global. How can we compete globally? In research. So they focus, we're going to focus on academic research and on technological research. And they gave incentives for companies to establish themselves, for startups to start to register themselves in Campinas on technology research. And the second thing they said we're going to focus a lot on is logistics. Campinas has an airport, that's Viracopos, a traditional, and it has 5 different interstate roads that pass nearby. So they're going to focus on logistics too. So also how to favor companies that want to invest in logistics. And then what did they do? They made two things. First, they tried to attract companies in those 2 segments. They even went on shows to different cities in China and Europe, trying to prove why Campinas is good. They prepared the work stating what are the requisites that attract companies to invest. And they did something that was very, 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 very interesting. They started benchmarking Campinas with the 50 largest cities in Brazil, and benchmarking it also against all the 15 cities that had more than 1 million inhabitants. And then they started seeing health, security, traffic, air pollution, all those variables, and how did they rank? And in the items that they weren't ranking well, they did a search, what were the cities that were doing well, what did they do? And they started improving policy based on evidence. It was a very good move of Campinas, because Campinas really outpaced most big cities in Brazil.
Regarding the reforms, do you believe they will improve the economy here in Brazil?
There's a story about 2 friends that were hunting together. No? So one friend, they hear that a lion is coming, something like that. Then one of them starts tying his tennis shoes on, his running shoes. And then the friend said, why are you putting the running shoes? You're not going to run faster than the lion with the tennis shoes. I have to run faster than you. The same thing about the reforms. We are reforming, but at a slower pace than the rest of the world. So what happens? The rest of the world is leaving us behind. We were last year in position 1 to 3 in the world ranking. This year, the year before, 2017, we went to 125 position. So if we don't speed up the reforms, we're going to be further and further and further behind the race.
Troster, thank you so much for this interview.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Luciane Miranda to Dukascopy TV.